Tony Curtis was a Hollywood sensation in his day thanks to his glitzy lifestyle and classic parts in films like Some Like It Hot and The Defiant ones. However, his life was shrouded in mystery and tragedy even beneath the spotlights of the stage. Leaving his entire fortune to Jill Vandenberg, his sixth wife, while omitting his children, was a controversial decision made by a star who once had it all: a spectacular career, amorous affairs, and a huge family. Ever wondered why? Did it stem from genuine affection or some inexplicable manipulation? Embark on a captivating trip with Tony Curtis as we delve into his rise from obscurity to stardom. Along the way, we'll uncover the hidden truths behind his mesmerizing grin, including the origins of his contested will in his formative years. The eldest child of Jewish immigrants Emanuel and Helen Schwartz, who arrived to America during a tumultuous period in world history, Tony Curtis was born Bernard Schwartz on June 3, 1925, in East Harlem, Manhattan. His mom was from Michalovce, Slovakia, and his dad was from Opale, close to Matsalka, Hungary. Throughout the Great Depression, the family of five from the Bronx, New York, endured relentless poverty. The family made do with a tight house in the room behind his father's tailor shop, but they were determined to survive. Up to the age of 6, Tony could only communicate in Hungarian. Because of the difficulty he had adjusting to school life due to the language barrier, Tony lagged behind his classmates academically. On top of everything else he went through as a kid, he had trouble fitting in at school and communicating. There was no escape from poverty due to the living conditions either. The family felt perpetually confined and deprived in the small room behind his father's shop. When Tony and his brother Julius were 8 years old, their family put them to an orphanage for a month because they couldn't afford to take care of all of their children. Tony, who was quite young at the time, felt abandoned and bitter as a result of this event. He carried the pain and loss with him for the rest of his life. His brother Julius was killed when a truck ran him over 4 years later, as if that weren't bad enough. Back then, Julius was a mere 12-year-old. As a result of this tragedy, Tony's sense of duty to defend his family and the pain of his loss were never fully healed. Tony had a tumultuous family life to add to his financial woes and death of loved ones. His mother Helen's erratic and aggressive behavior was a result of her schizophrenia. Because of her uncontrollable tantrums, Tony had a traumatic upbringing in which love and safety were constant necessities. Anguish consumed his mother, he said, and she could go from loving embraces to violent outbursts in the blink of an eye. On the other hand, it was during his mother's lucid periods that he inherited an appreciation for the arts. Helen frequently brought Tony to the theater to see double features, and it was during these outings that Tony first experienced the magic of the movies. For a young Tony, the movies were a refuge from his oppressive home life, a place where uplifting tales might take the place of his problems and sorrows. Going to the movies with his mom was the beginning of Tony's love for movies, which would continue to grow and flourish throughout his life. Tony became incapacitated for a long time at 13 years old after contracting rheumatic illness. Although this was yet another difficult period in his life, it did provide him with a fresh outlet for his creativity. As a way to express himself while physically confined, Tony took up painting. As he drew, he let his emotions and thoughts flow freely from his heart. As a means of expressing his anguish, longings, and hopes for a brighter future, art became an outlet for Tony. In addition to comfort, Tony found liberation and self-worth in his paintings. Tony overcame the darkness of his youth by the beauty he found in each work, which in turn gave significance to his hardships. After the Pearl Harbor attack in 1941, Tony's life took a different turn. Seeking a fresh start and a means to break free from his mundane existence, Tony was influenced by the Navy films starring Tyrone Power and Cary Grant and made the decision to enlist in the United States Navy. The USS Proteum, a support vessel for submarines in the Pacific Submarine Force, was his designated duty ship. Discipline, patience, and endurance were skills Tony honed while at sea that served him well not only in overcoming adversity but also in enduring the rigors of the film industry. Witnessing Japan's capitulation from the USS Proteum in Tokyo Bay on September 2, 1945 was one of Tony's most unforgettable memories during his Navy career. Tony will always remember that event as a watershed in history. It taught him the value of grit and how life is dynamic and unpredictable. His time in the Navy fortified his resolve, disciplined him, and exposed him to new perspectives, equipping him for the challenging path that lies ahead in the performing world. Tragedies, struggles, and unforgettable experiences abound in Tony Curtis' formative years. The basis for his difficult yet dazzling road to dominate Hollywood was laid by these struggles, which gave him a steel-like resolve and a strong love of the arts. Start of one's professional life. Tony Curtis had a deal with Universal Studios at the beginning of his career, which allowed him to start off with little parts and establish his reputation in the film industry. He made his film debut in 1949's Criss Cross, playing a Roomba dancer opposite Yvonne De Carlo in an uncredited part. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get people talking and get producers interested. After that, in 1949's City Across the River, he made his acting debut, which is when he decided to go by the name Anthony Curtis, which is both endearing and sharp, perfect for an actor. Films like Johnny Stool Pigeon and The Lady Gamble started trickling into Curtis's career after that. His acting chops were sharpened in 1950 with appearances in Francis, Woman in Hiding, and I Was a Shoplifter. Tony Curtis's career took a dramatic leap forward in 1951 with the opportunity to feature in the Middle Eastern adventure picture The Prince, Who Was a Thief. The role solidified his place as a main performer. Curtis won over crowds with his assured performances and endearing charisma. The picture was a financial triumph, catapulting Curtis from supporting actor to leading man and setting him up for future parts of greater complexity and scale. During this time, Tony diversified his acting chops by appearing in a number of films, including the 1952 boxing drama Flesh and Fury, the 1953 comedy No Room for the Groom, directed by Douglas Sirk, and the 1954 picture Son of Alibaba, among others. Notably, Curtis's star was further enhanced in 1953 with his co-starring with Janet Leigh in the picture Houdini, which also ignited a famous off-screen affair between Leigh and Curtis. Tony Curtis gained invaluable insight into filmgoers and the business as a whole through these parts, which were more than just acting possibilities. In preparation for his future jobs, he studied fencing and horseback riding, demonstrating a willingness to work hard and embrace obstacles. Playing a wide range of parts from adventure and action to comedy and drama helped Curtis establish himself as a leading man in the business. Tony Curtis rose to become an A-list Hollywood star, someone who could take on any task that the film industry threw at him, thanks to a mix of natural skill, hard effort, and dogged persistence. A prosperous professional life. After establishing himself in supporting parts, Tony Curtis rose to prominence in the 50s and 60s as one of Hollywood's most charismatic and gifted performers. His cinematic career began in 1955 with the comedic musical So This Is Paris and continued with roles as a bank robber in Six Bridges to Cross and an adventurer in The Purple Mask. As a result of these parts, Curtis became even more famous and became one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. The 1957 film The Sweet Smell of Success, in which Tony Curtis portrayed the manipulative and crafty publicist Sidney Falco, was a watershed moment in his career. Curtis proved in this picture that she was capable of acting in genres other than comedies. Characters that called for nuanced and intricate psychology were also within his capabilities. Critics gushed over Curtis's performance, praising his authenticity and vividness, signifying a significant turning point in his acting profession. Tony Curtis co-starred with Marilyn Monroe and Jack Lemmon in the 1959 film Some Like It Hot, which was the most successful and iconic role of Curtis' career. Curtis portrayed a musician in the film who tries to evade the mafia by disguising himself as a lady. Fans enjoyed his performance for its pleasant and funny moments as well as its subtle satire on love and self-discovery. This picture catapulted Curtis to stardom and cemented his place in Hollywood history as one of the all-time great comedies. Concurrently, Tony Curtis demonstrated his versatility as an actor by appearing in a wide variety of genre films. He co-starred with Cary Grant as a soldier in the 1959 war comedy Operation Petticoat, where he expertly combined action with humor. Making Curtis even more beloved by moviegoers and industry insiders, the picture was a smashing hit. In the 1960 epic Spartacus, Curtis portrayed Antoninus, a figure with a complicated relationship with Laurence Olivier's character. This role was another key milestone in Curtis's career. Although it was omitted from the first release, the iconic scene between Curtis and Olivier demonstrated Curtis' fearlessness in tackling difficult roles and questioning societal conventions. When it came to film, Tony Curtis wasn't limited to comedies or action flicks. He was also cast in dramatic and tragic roles. One such example is his 1958 picture The Defiant Ones, which he co-starred in alongside Sidney Poitier. His genuine and profound acting skills were recognized by critics and colleagues for this portrayal, which led to an Oscar nomination for Best Actor. The silver screen was not the only arena in which Curtis excelled. Additionally, he dabbled with television. Along with Roger Moore, he appeared in the 1971 TV series The Persuaders. Despite its brief run, Curtis was able to further establish himself as an adaptable actor and increase his influence thanks to the series. Tony Curtis was able to maintain his great career by constantly pushing himself to his limits in a wide variety of roles. In addition to being an endearing symbol, he was a gifted actor who dedicated himself wholeheartedly to his work. Because of this, he was able to thrive in the cutthroat world of Hollywood, where success is measured in inches. A life of passionate romances, storms, and obstacles lay beneath Tony Curtis's glittering stage career and Hollywood blockbusters. Each of Curtis's 6 marriages to various women had its own unique history, full of highs and lows, happy times and sad endings. In 1950, at the height of their respective careers, Tony Curtis crossed paths with actress Janet Leigh and started a relationship with her. Famous for her graceful performance in Alfred Hitchcock's iconic film Psycho, Janet Leigh was a much-loved Hollywood star. In 1951, Tony and Janet, who had become a popular couple in 1950s Hollywood, tied the knot. The press hailed Curtis and Leigh's marriage as Hollywood's golden marriage, and it was a major event in the entertainment world. In addition to making guest appearances at important events, they also co-starred in other films, the most notable of which being 1953's Houdini, in which they brought a dramatic and enigmatic love story to the big screen as a married couple. A passionate and tender love story unfolded between Curtis and Leigh. They enjoyed carefree moments on California beaches, strolling under the golden sun and enjoying the calm midst of the famed storm. Tony once said that Janet Leigh was the lady who made his heart beat furiously. Problems with work and the media made it impossible for this couple to thrive. Both Tony and the famous and successful Janet Leigh had to juggle their hectic schedules to stay in the limelight. As Tony's infidelity worsened and suspicions of his extramarital affairs spread, tensions rose. The rumors had some truth to them. Tony Curtis, who is famously handsome and charismatic, was unable to resist the temptation of short-lived relationships. As a result, his relationship with Janet Leigh began to weaken over time. Whenever Tony heard reports that Janet was seeing Frank Sinatra, the famed singer, he began to question her allegiance. Despite the lack of proof, Tony's jealousy and suspicions simply served to heighten the already tense relationship between Janet and Frank. One of Hollywood's most famous couples came to an end when they divorced in 1962. Unfortunately, Tony's erratic lifestyle and infidelity led to this breakup, which many fans regretted. Actress Christine Kaufman, with whom Tony Curtis co-starred in Taras Bulba, became his girlfriend shortly after his divorce from Janet Leigh. German actress Christine Kaufman won over the heart of a guy looking for solace after his failed marriage. She was 19 years younger than Curtis. His life took a turn in 1963 when he tied the knot with Kaufman. We entered this partnership full of love and optimism. Alexandra and Allegra were born to Curtis and Kaufman, a happy couple. But as time went on, their relationship became more strained due to lifestyle contrasts and the trappings of celebrity. No matter how hard he tried, Curtis was unable to shake his past problems or overcome his addictions. Christine finally snapped in 1968 when this became intolerable for her. In 1968, a model who was 20 years his junior. Nicholas and Benjamin were Tony's sons from his marriage to Leslie. Both marriages ultimately failed because of Curtis's problems, especially his addiction and his erratic lifestyle. They chose to divorce in 1982 after their differences grew intolerable. Once more. The string of flings and marriages that Tony Curtis was a part of never ended. Andrea Savio was Curtis's spouse in 1984, however, the union was short-lived. They had already resolved to go their own ways by 1992. He quickly wed Lisa Deutsch, an attorney from outside the entertainment world, because he never gave up on the idea of finding happiness. Unfortunately, their romance came to an abrupt end after only 18 months, much like his prior marriages. His energy dwindling with each ineffective marriage. Jill Vandenberg, Curtis's sixth wife, was 45 years his junior when they wed in 1998. Jill started out as a model, then shifted careers to train horses. In spite of their age gap, the two formed a rescue ranch together because they shared a deep love for helping abused and neglected animals. Tony Curtis appeared to find some solace in his marriage to Jill Vandenberg, which allowed him to lead a life free of turmoil. Tony Curtis had a battle with addiction on top of his troubled marriages and relationships. He developed an alcohol and painkiller addiction in the 1970s. Both his personal and professional life were profoundly impacted by his carefree attitude and substance abuse. When Curtis seemed drunk at public events, he was criticized by both the media and his fans. His reputation took a hit, and his relationships, particularly those with his children, took a hit as a result. Curtis checked into a Betty Ford Center rehabilitation program in the mid-1980s after deciding he needed assistance. He was able to get his life back on track after this pivotal moment. Curtis met Betty Ford, with whom he discussed his rehab was about more than simply getting off drugs. It was also about dealing with his issues, learning to love and forgive oneself, and confronting his roots. Nevertheless, the most devastating tragedy that Curtis endured was the 1994 heroin overdose loss of his son Nicholas. There was a tremendous hole in Curtis' life created by this irretrievable loss. After losing Nicholas, he had to face the ugly reality of the family problems he had ignored due to his addiction and stardom, and realized that he had failed as a parent. Tony Curtis made an effort to keep a healthy relationship with his children, even if he had a rocky personal life. It is worth mentioning that he frequently spoke highly of his connection with Jamie Lee Curtis, his daughter from a previous marriage to Janet Leigh, who became a famous Hollywood actress. Even though Jamie Lee Curtis's dad wasn't perfect, she still says he did his best to take care of his family. Painting profession. Tony Curtis redirected his energy from his struggle with addiction to painting, another of his great passions. When he was a young man, he was bedridden with rheumatic sickness, but he found comfort in drawing, and it was the beginning of his passion of painting. As he became older, Curtis spent more time creating art. Imitating the work of masters like Picasso, Matisse, and Van Gogh was a major influence. Exhibiting his most famous piece, The Red Table, at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, an immense distinction for any artist, demonstrated that Curtis's brilliance and imagination extended beyond the realm of cinema. Even though he painted a lot, Curtis did not give up acting altogether. In his last film role, David and Fathom, he returned to his humble origins and used his former surname, Schwartz, to pay homage to his roots. As Curtis chose to end his acting career by bringing attention to his roots and history. It was a deeply personal decision. Demise and a contentious will. Tony Curtis, who was 85 years old when he died on September 29, 2010, in Sin City, one of Hollywood's finest actors, succumbed to his weak heart after battling health concerns for years. His life was full of highs and lows, triumphs and tragedies and complexity, yet he died calmly at the end of it. But disputes over his will surfaced shortly after his death, leading to a court struggle between his daughter and sixth wife. The Vandenbergs' children from his prior marriages and Jill Vandenberg. An unexpected and stunning amendment was made to Tony Curtis's will just before he passed away, which caught his loved ones and supporters off guard. Nothing was left to his children from prior marriages in his new will. Instead, his entire inheritance, valued at around $60 million, was left to his sixth wife, Jill Vandenberg. Anger, disappointment, and much perplexion resulted from this choice, caused a heated disagreement between Jill and the children of Curtis, especially Allegra Curtis, who is his daughter from a previous marriage to Christine Kaufman, as well as his first wife. Some members of the Curtis family, including Allegra, suspected that their father had been coerced into revising his will just before he died, when he was clearly too drunk to make an informed decision. They asserted that Jill Vandenberg had used Curtis' deteriorating health in his latter years to exert influence over him and secure her position as the only successor. Allegra spoke out against Jill, saying that Tony Curtis' genuine sentiments and desires for his children were not represented by this choice. The last of Curtis's wives, Jill Vandenberg, who was 45 years his junior, justified his choice. She said that Curtis had asked for it. After his death, he hoped she had a wonderful life because he thought his children were mature and could take care of themselves. In the absence of his bequest, the leaving of the whole estate to Jill was Curtis's method of expressing his appreciation and affection, as she had been at his side during his last years, caring for and supporting him through his health challenges, as Jill stressed. For months, the courts heard arguments from both parties in this protracted legal struggle. Evidence and testimony from Curtis's children, especially his daughters Allegra and Kelly Curtis from his marriage to Janet Lee, proved that his will had been amended owing to undue influence. Allegra insisted she and her father were very close and that she did not comprehend Curtis's decision to cut off his children's share of his estate. On the other hand, Jill Vandenberg and her attorneys sought to establish that Curtis had willingly and freely altered his will, free from any form of coercion. Dr. Curtis's testimony was offered, confirming that he was still cognitively competent and able to make judgments at the time of his will alteration. The connection between Curtis and his children had grown distant over his last years, and Jill had no say in his choices, as she revealed. Auctioning off Tony Curtis' priceless personal possessions, including artifacts from his life and work, by Jill Vandenberg was one of the most contentious parts of the case. Many priceless artworks, as well as the jacket from Some Like It Hot and letters sent by Curtis to co-workers, were among the items. The event generated a substantial amount of money for Jill, with approximately 500 things being auctioned off. This just served to infuriate Curtis's offspring even more. These things were very meaningful to the Curtis family, and Allegra Curtis spoke out against the auction, saying that they should have saved them as keepsakes to honor their father. She said that selling Curtis's mementos was an affront to his legacy and questioned the auction's openness. Jill and the auctioneers, though, insisted that Tony himself had decided what would be for sale and that they were only doing what he wanted. Tony Curtis's children got nothing from their father's money, and Jill Vandenberg was left as the only heir after a long and contentious legal battle. Even though some of Curtis's grandkids got a little something, it wasn't quite enough to cover the cost of the goods that were up for sale. Allegra and Kelly, in particular, thought their attempts to defend their rights had been for naught because of this result, which left them bitter and disappointed. Decided to stay out of the legal dispute and keep quiet. Jamie Lee claimed she was self-sufficient thanks to her successful job and that she saw no reason to contest her father's fortune. The fact that she showed zero animosity toward her father's choice set her apart from her siblings. Despite Jill Vandenberg's victory and her subsequent status as Tony Curtis' sole heir, the court struggle permanently marred his legacy. As a great Hollywood celebrity, Curtis's reputation took a hit due to the family's petty quarrels and disagreements about his inheritance and finances. The life of an artist who had made significant contributions to the field and who had persevered through adversity met a tragic end. Tony Curtis, a complex man whose life was full of ups and downs, left behind a legacy of outstanding films and a tale of triumph and tragedy. His work will live on in Hollywood lore, a city where the lights and the dark mingle, and where even the greatest actors have to deal with the pressures of real life. Much obliged for your time. To make sure you don't miss any more thrilling content, subscribe to the channel and give it a like. Post a comment and express your ideas. Coming up in the next video, man. Goodbye.